Around 8 or 9 years ago, I beat my first demon deadlocked. Now, for me at the time, this was a pretty challenging experience, but after a grueling 5,000 attempts, I finally beat it. Now, since then I've gotten a lot better at the game. I can beat demons in far fewer attempts, but the thing is, I haven't just gotten better with my raw skill. There's a lot more to getting better at Geometry Dash than that. You see, that 5,000 attempts was a pretty brutal experience. I felt inconsistent, I felt like I'd never be able to beat it, but I finally did. Nowadays, spending 5,000 attempts on a level is a lot different for me. When I pick up a level that'll take me around 5,000 attempts to beat, it's a much smoother experience nowadays. Learning how to approach a difficult level and to continue building consistency even after you maybe feel stuck is a really important skill to master as well. If you're someone who plans on attempting a jump soon, or someone who just struggles with motivation in general, learning this skill could make a huge difference for your experiences. To many players, the thought of spending over 100,000 attempts on a level might sound unfathomable, but if you know what you're doing, it can actually be a very smooth experience. Now, it's getting really cold out here, so let me go in and explain. For this particular skill of approaching levels, almost everyone has at least some experience. A lot of people, when they first play the game, refuse to use practice mode because it feels cheap and lazy when you could just try to go from zero until you beat it. But we all eventually learned that practice mode was actually really helpful, and being able to beat harder levels with it felt more rewarding. Later down the line, we probably all realized at some point that start positions were a great way to practice specific sections of the level to build up consistency. We also learned that when you go to sleep and wake up the next day, you perform a lot better on gameplay you had learned the previous day. Now, these are the tools we use to beat levels in a few thousand attempts. If you know how to use start positions, use sleep consistency, then you can beat pretty much any level that would take you under 10,000 attempts. But what exactly do I mean with the word can? We're all capable of learning and beating levels. Using start positions isn't something you only can do with a certain skill level. Start positions are useful for everybody. And well, that's true, but just because you know that using a start position will help doesn't mean you intuit it. The key here is staying motivated. It's really difficult to get yourself to do anything if there isn't any expected reward on the other side of performing the task. If you know intuitively that grinding out this start position run will help build consistency, you'll be very motivated to do it. If this isn't something you've experienced before, staying motivated to do it will be a lot harder. You'd be more inclined to give up or go back to old habits. I imagine most people watching this video are pretty experienced players, so we're probably all familiar with start positions and sleep consistency and utilizing those to give us boosts. That push from 10,000 to 100,000 attempts is a pretty big one, but not as big as it sounds. As you go higher and higher on the list, the levels will, on average, of course, take more and more attempts, but that growth is exponential. The difference between a 1,000 attempt experience and a 10,000 attempt experience feels pretty comparable to me to the difference between a 10,000 and a 100,000 attempt experience. If approached correctly, a 100,000 attempt experience can be fun and motivating the whole way through. Now, I think the easiest way for me to explain how to go about a 100,000 attempt experience will be to go through the journey of how I learned these strategies. All the way back in 2022, I jumped from Stalemate Redux to Rust. Now, this is a pretty big jump. The most attempts I had taken before the jump was around 20,000, and Rust took me 86,000. Now, of course, this was a struggle. My consistency felt stagnant for so long, almost similar to how I felt all the way back when I was playing Deadlocked. Every day when I would play the level, I would go play from the last start position I had in the level, got comfortable there, and then backed up until I was comfortable with every start position and therefore every part of the level. After that, I would go ahead and start playing from zero and see where I could get. Now, this was a great tactic for levels that would take me 20,000 attempts or less. But on Rust, it felt like I was just doing the same thing over and over again and not seeing any consistency come from it. I felt like I was waiting for a lucky attempt to come along, which is never how you should feel playing a level. You should never feel like you're waiting to get lucky. There is always a pragmatic step you can take to build your consistency. Now, eventually, after months of playing the same way every single day, I did get more consistent and eventually beat the level. But it could have gone so much faster and been a more smooth experience if I knew what I was doing. With my next hardest, Critical Heat, I went in with a much better mindset. With that level, I spent a lot more time playing from start positions. I didn't just use them to warm up and make sure I was comfortable with the gameplay. I really focused on building consistency. And when I did play from zero, this is key, I didn't just focus on trying to get a new best. This can be challenging to get over because the game rewards you when you get a new best, and that's what it displays on the screen. The problem with Rust was that I was focusing on trying to get a new best. It was out of reach, so when I felt inconsistent or had been a while since I was able to get a new best, I felt stuck. And of course, since the whole goal is to beat the level, What else are you going to focus on? But the key is focusing on your consistency instead of your best. Because your best doesn't necessarily represent how consistent you are at the level. If you're stuck at the part where your best is, then your consistency might be underrepresented by your best. If you've progress fluked, then your consistency would be overrepresented by your best. Something that would represent your consistency better could be your 5th best, or your 10th best, 25th, 50th, any of those. A lot of the times, if I feel stuck on a level, I look at what my 50th best is from 0 and try to work on improving that. Usually, my 50th best is something that feels within reach. And there are many other ways to help shift your focus from best run to consistency. And this is where I highly recommend the death tracker mod. It tracks every single death you get on a level, so you don't have to write all this information down. One thing to focus on is the amount of times you reach a certain point in a level. For example, when I started playing Tartarus from 0, instead of trying to get a new best, I just tried to get to the drop as many times as possible. I wanted to focus on pre-drop consistency, so this is the mindset I undertook. Now, of course, later on in the experience, when I was really consistent with the pre-drop, I didn't really worry about how often I was able to pass it because it was just that often. But at that point, you can just shift your focus further into the level. With Tartarus, it became how many times can I reach 47%? 47% is past the second big choke point in the level, that 45-46% shift. Now, with Tartarus, I got pretty lucky. If I got unlucky, however, I would have ended up shifting my focus to be getting to 65%. Counting the amount of times you pass a certain point in a level will help you get an idea of how consistent you are. This strategy doesn't have to be something you only do when you play from 0. You can also do this from start positions, trying to get those bigger runs to 100. Now, one of the biggest demotivators for a big experience like this is feeling like you've lost consistency, and it can happen. A lot of consistency is mental. It's important to know that your physical consistency doesn't really get worse unless you take time away from the level. It's all a mental game. Now, if you want to deep dive on that mental game, I did make a video about this. Conquering the mental game of Geometry Dash. I'll link it in the description if you're interested. Again, when it comes to staying motivated, your brain needs to see some kind of reward for what you're doing. Personally, I've kind of internalized the idea that every single drop attempt helps me get more consistent at the pre-drop. When I'm playing a level, of course, the goal is to beat the level, but there are always 5 other sub-goals that I'm working towards at the same time. If I'm mind-blocking a section in the middle of the level, I can focus on my goal of reaching that section a lot more consistently. When I was really struggling with that 45% ship on Tartarus, I shifted my focus to be reaching it as often as possible. So this should hopefully help you stay motivated despite having mind blocks. Even though Tartarus took me 50,000 attempts, 10 times more than my old deadlock completion, I felt motivated and secure in my ability to complete the level the entire time. I always felt like there was a next step, something else I could do to further build my consistency. The only thing is, when you finally do beat the level, sometimes that leaves some of your other sub-goals unfulfilled. For me, that's never been an issue, because at the end of the day, the goal is to beat the level. So I wouldn't worry about shifting your focus away from actually beating the level too much. It's always still the main thing. So when you shift your focus from progress to consistency, you'll see a massive difference in motivation, enjoyment, and how good you are at the game.